just seemed like Puff and Tupac was like a couple, seemed like to me. It was just a lot of weird shit going on, and, you know what I'm saying? The vibes ain't there. I guess that's what Tupac was talking about, the Illuminati and shit. It's like Vivica Fox was with this big gay man. He was 6'9". They called him, his name 6'9". He had the red hair with a big old booty. Nobody was gay no more. What the is going on here?
The moment Bryshere Gray opened his mouth, everything people thought they knew about Hollywood's most polished power circle started cracking. And what spilled out wasn't just gossip, it felt like a warning. Because suddenly those long whispered rumors about Will Smith weren't sitting quietly in the background anymore. They were being dragged right into the spotlight with names, patterns, and disturbing connections attached. And the question that nobody can ignore now is simple. If even half of this is true, how long has this been hiding in plain sight? Because let's slow this down for just a second. We're not just talking about messy celebrity drama. We're talking about alleged secret parties, infections, and a lifestyle that doesn't match the carefully crafted family man image the world has been sold for decades. And when Bryshere's claims started lining up with what a former assistant had already hinted at months before, that's when things stopped sounding random. That's when it started sounding organized, planned, repeated, and then the timing. Always the timing. Just days before Cassie shook the industry with that lawsuit against Diddy, old whispers started resurfacing about tension between Will and Diddy themselves. Not over business, not over music, over J-Lo. And when Diddy's former bodyguard, Jane Deal, casually confirmed that there had been friction because Will allegedly got a little too comfortable around her, it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like a pattern peeking through the cracks.
At a birthday party that I think either Matt Damien was giving for Ben Affleck. It was just a little gathering. It was at the Four Seasons. Will Smith and his sister and her husband, we were all sitting on this side of the room. Matt Damien, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez, Puff, Will Smith, and Jaden, that was sitting on the other side of the room. So I know Puff so well that he stood up. When he stood up, he walked and did his own some kind of way, like, and then he was like this, you know, like that. I went over towards him. I know to go over there towards him. So I go over towards him, and he said to me, he said, "Yo, I think Will and Jada is trying to scoop up Jennifer. I want you to stay close, because I'm a snuffer." I said to myself, Will Smith gonna beat the shit out of you. Now, Puff could scrap now, but I don't think he could beat Will Smith.
Because once that story hit, people didn't just react, they started connecting dots. Suddenly, the idea of Will and Jada being comfortable in those same elite circles didn't feel surprising anymore. It felt expected. And that's where things get even more uncomfortable, because the conversation quietly shifts from rumors to behavior, from isolated incidents to repeated proximity. And then there's that infamous moment that refuses to disappear. The old allegations, the resurfaced posts, the whispers about hidden relationships and identities that were once brushed off as internet noise. But now people are going back and rewatching everything with a different lens, asking different questions, seeing different intentions. And right in the middle of all of this is Bryshere, young, rising, vulnerable, stepping into Hollywood, thinking he was about to be guided by legends, only for multiple voices to now suggest that what he actually walked into was something else entirely, something darker, something that didn't come with contracts or cameras, but expectations. Because think about it, why him? Why was Bryshere, at that exact stage of his career, placed in the orbit of two of the most powerful men in entertainment at the same time? Was it really mentorship, or was it access? And the story doesn't slow down, it tightens.
They're both bisexual, they do weird things in their house, and young men have left their house screaming to get away from them in their mentorship. Meek Mills, Bryshere Gray, left that house screaming. August the only one that stayed, and I guess he was really sick. He needed the help.
Because now the focus shifts to the people who were supposed to protect him, his manager, his mother, the ones who should have noticed if something was off. And people aren't just asking if they knew, they're asking how they couldn't. Because when someone is allegedly going through something that heavy, it doesn't stay hidden forever. It leaks in behavior, in silence, in sudden changes that nobody can explain. And that's where Terrence Howard quietly enters the picture, not as a loud accuser, but as someone who was there, watching, observing, seeing Bryshere up close during that exact period when everything was supposedly happening behind closed doors. And when someone like that starts speaking, even subtly, it changes the weight of the conversation.
But when you lose your man card, that's the only thing I can think of. You lose your damn man card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying. You don't get that back. You come into this world as a man one time. You give up that right for anything, for fear of being hurt, fear of somebody doing something, for wanting to gain something. When you give up that man card right, you lose some spiritual energy that has always been pushing through. Like if a woman gives up her womanly right, but when you give up your manhood, I've never seen somebody recover from it. That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Get punked out and punked out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man.
Because now it's not just rumors floating online, it's overlapping accounts, different people, different angles, all circling the same uncomfortable possibility that what was presented as opportunity might have been something else entirely. And if that's true, then the real question isn't what happened. It's how many people already knew and chose to stay silent. And just when you think this story has reached its breaking point, it mutates into something even darker. Because the real aftermath doesn't show up during the alleged mentorship, it shows up after. In the chaos, in the unraveling, in the way Bryshere's life reportedly spiraled into legal trouble after legal trouble, like something inside him never fully recovered. And people aren't just calling that coincidence anymore, they're calling it a consequence. Because what happens to someone after they leave an environment often tells you more about that environment than anything that happened inside it. But here's where things stop being just about Bryshere and start expanding into something much bigger. Because suddenly, his name isn't the only one being attached to these kinds of allegations. Alsina, Brian King Joseph, even whispers involving Jaden Smith. Different people, different timelines, but the same gravitational pull back to one central figure. And when multiple individuals from completely separate paths begin to echo similar discomfort, it forces a question nobody wants to ask out loud. Is this a coincidence or a pattern? Because the situation involving Brian King Joseph doesn't just sound strange, it sounds calculated. The hiring, the sudden closeness, the language about having a special connection, and then that moment. The missing bag, the hotel room access. The items left behind that didn't belong to him. HIV medication, a message, a promise to return. It reads less like a misunderstanding and more like a setup that went wrong. And what makes it even more unsettling is what allegedly followed being dismissed, embarrassed, and pushed out as if speaking up was the real problem. And just when the tension reaches that point, the conversation shifts again, quietly but powerfully toward Jaden. Because now people aren't just revisiting rumors, they're reinterpreting moments that once seemed harmless. The old interviews, the jokes, the viral clips. And suddenly, that brief period where Jaden reportedly wanted emancipation doesn't feel like teenage rebellion anymore. It feels like something deeper, something emotional, something unresolved. Because think about it, what makes a 15-year-old even consider separating from his own parents? That's not a casual thought. That's not something that comes out of nowhere. And even though it was brushed off publicly, even laughed about, behind that laughter was an admission, acknowledgement that something had shifted, that trust had been damaged, that a line had been crossed, even if nobody ever fully explained how. And then there's the shadow that keeps looming over everything Diddy, because his name refuses to stay separate from this conversation. The accusations, the history, the whispers about health, about behavior, about what really goes on behind those elite industry doors. And if even a fraction of those worlds overlap the way people are now suggesting, then what we're looking at isn't just individual scandals. It's a network, a culture, one where silence isn't accidental, it's enforced. And suddenly, everything starts to feel connected. The old rumors that were dismissed too quickly, the whistleblowers who were labeled as bitter or unstable, the young artists who entered the industry full of promise and left it completely different, the lawsuits, the denials, the carefully worded statements that never actually answer anything. Because when you step back and look at the full picture, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels structured, like pieces of a story that were never meant to be put together all at once. And now that they are, people are starting to realize something uncomfortable. This might not be the end of the story. This might just be the part where it finally starts coming out.